Podcast today. Thank you everybody who are watching us online. We'll continue our work in the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and the topic of our next press conference is presentation of the report Where Did the Fire Come From? Investigation of cross-border attacks in eastern Ukraine. Our guests are Svitlana Valko, coordinator of field missions in Ukraine, IPHR, Oleksandr Delemenchuk, advisor at Truth House, Oleg Martynenko, also who is the head of the analytical department at the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union, and Simon Papuashvili, project manager, IPHR Belgium via Skype. Good day, dear guests. And I would like to give this floor to Svitlana. Your microphone is switched on. Thank you very much, Valentin. Good day, everybody. My name is Svitlana Valko. I'm coordinator of the field missions in Ukraine of International Non-Government Organization and International Partnership for Human Rights that is based in Brussels. And for the last 1 year and a half, this organization, together with partners, collects proofs of military crimes and crimes against humanity in the east of Ukraine. During this 1 year and a half, a lot of proofs were gathered already that organization is planning to give and given already to international court in Hague. And among these proofs are cases of kidnapping, tortures, using of civil people as hostages, usage of civil people as a live border from the enemy, and non-proportional shelling. I mean the shelling of the civil objects and objects that are protected, such as schools, hospitals, religious objects, so on and so forth. During this 1 year and a half, the team of IPHR, together with partner, goes to conflict area all the time, investigating these proofs, collecting these proofs in the fields from real victims, witnesses, and at the places of shelling. We did that. We made reports on the shellings and proving of the shellings in Mariupol, Volnovakha, Kramatorsk, where most of civil population suffered. Within these field missions on the territory of Lugansk region, first time last year we noticed something unusual when we were measuring the angle of the shelling in some villages, and we started our investigation in Lugansk, in border area adjacent to Russian Federation border, of the shelling that were made in summer and September of 2014. This shelling was very intensive, that's why we couldn't get there that time. We started investigating it later. Investigating the shelling in 6 villages of Lugansk region, I mean Kolosnikivka, Kumyshna, Milove, Krasnotalivka, Dmitriivka, and Pobeda. We noticed that these shellings most probably were made from the territory of Russian Federation. But to prove this hypothesis by the argument that we can present into international courts, we started collecting materials. In what way we started doing it? Within the report we present to you today, we asked 45 civil witnesses and bodyguard officers who had service 2 years ago on that part of the border. We compared satellite maps to these events before them and after them, to see the traces of artillery, to see the consequences of the shelling, and to prove trans-border shelling from the territory of Russian Federation. We found photos and videos of local citizens who witnessed these events, and we analyzed, according to international tools, the time of the shelling, the weapon that was used. We asked local citizens in social media as well, and with the help of our partners, we tracked the records of Russian militaries who were located next to the border, 33 soldiers minimum geotech their location in this area that Russian Federation was used for shelling. I mean Tarasevsky district of Rostov region. Also, we followed the reports of other organizations, what OEC is talking about that, what the most famous investigators were telling about that online, I mean American organization Bellingcat. And within our investigation, we can not just make proofs, but we can confirm that in summer 2014, in summer and autumn, from the territory of Russian Federation, by small weapons and reactive artillery, minimum 5 villages were shelled in Lugansk on Ukrainian territory, and in Krasnotalivka there was attack made with the help of Russian troops, and after the attack they came back to the territory of Russian Federation. The attack to two villages, Kolsnikovka and Kamyshka, they attacked civil objects also, and in the result citizens were injured, as minimum 20 buildings were damaged as a consequence of this attack from the side of Russian Federation. In our report you can find the proofs of minimum 3 camps where Russian militaries were located for shelling, and after that they were coming back to their constant residence in their military units. We found the numbers of military units whose soldiers took part in these attacks. We defined the direction of the shelling and firing with the precision, using the shells that left in the ground, notwithstanding the fact it's more than 2 years now. Also, we used satellite maps for that. We defined what kind of weapon was used, and there were small arms and reactive artillery, and we can say that these 6 villages as minimum were attacked from the territory of Russian Federation with the participation of Russian professional militaries, with the help of drones owned by Russian Federation, and in minimum 1 case Russian helicopter was used. This investigation, this report was prepared to use it in international court processes. My colleague will tell you later about it, and we are not the one with our report. Last week, American investigators Bellingcat published few investigations about shelling and firing from the territory of Russian Federation in other locations. Also, we collected proofs that can be used in the courts of the victims and witnesses, professional witnesses. I mean doctors and local administration, I mean bodyguard officers, that can be used and compared to other data from other sources. We can say we verified very thoroughly all the sources we used that witnessed this firing from the side of Russian Federation, and we didn't accept it as a fact before we got minimum sources for every fact confirming our conclusions. Our conclusions are confirmations that we will use in our further work with these materials, that will be transferred to other human rights activists to use it as a proof, and together with our other proofs of military crimes that were made on the territory of Donbass for international processes. And my colleagues will tell you more about it. Thank you. Thank you, Svitlana. And now I give the floor to Oleksandr. Good morning. My name is Oleksandr Delemenchuk. I work as advisor at Truth House international initiative. It is an international initiative joining the people from different countries, people who are documenting mass violations of human rights, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, and investigation of the work in conflict zones. The zone of our interests are of the countries of former Soviet Union. We focus at Caucasus most of all, and our perspective is the Middle East and the places with contemporary military conflicts. And let's continue what Svitlana started discussing. Of course, she knew well-known facts. We all know that those living in Ukraine this during last 2 years, but looking at this fact from the point of view of international community, international diplomacy, international law, you remember and you still can see how many discussions are going on still. Is a conflict in Ukraine international or internal conflict? And there were a lot of speculations on this topic. And notwithstanding the fact that our report is only about 6 villages in the border area in Lugansk region. From the point of view of international rights, this report allows us to make powerful conclusions. What do I mean? According to international humanitarian law, if one country is making intervention to the territory of other country, and doesn't matter for how long this intervention lasted, was it permanent or not, how many people were involved, how many people suffered because of that intervention. Still, it allows to qualify this situation as international conflict, as international military conflict. That's why our report gives answer to one of the most important questions that is being asked on the international level about Ukrainian conflict. And in the same way, it's important because together with the proofs, together with the documents of us, the human rights organization, Ukrainian International, sooner or later it will allow us to understand how Russian intervention to the territory of Ukraine was going on, or many other interventions. That is the first important conclusion. Second important conclusion is, as you noticed, Svitlana told that all the materials of this report and other reports we are preparing together with our partners will be used for international processes in court, but that actions that were made, especially in the village Kamyshne and Kolesnikivka. Sorry, my memory for the geographical object is not very good. So regarding these two villages, the actions in regard these two villages are in Rome Statute, that is a part of international legislation. I mean, too many cases of accident damage, injuries or murder. And as Svitlana told you about civil object, about civil persons, we can say that these objects were selected as military targets, and in this way it allowed those who made intervention to have military advantage. So it translated into human language, not legal language. It was the usage of civil objects and attack to civil persons that allowed them to complete specific military tasks, and that's what we mean by intervention to the territory of Ukraine by Russian Federation, and that one of the proofs that the conflict happened in Donbass from the point of view of international humanitarian legislation is is international conflict. That's all that I can tell you from my side. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you very much, Oleksandr. Now I give the floor to Oleg.
My name is Oleg Martynenko. I represent here analytical direction the Helsinki Union for the Human Rights for 18 months now. We are dealing with the documentation of different violations of the international human rights. Within the framework of the pilot project, we are trying to set up the Center for the Documentation, which will become the basis to provide the services for NGOs, volunteer initiatives, and the international institutions as well. Our colleagues participate in this study because if we could restore the events, circumstances from the point of view or based on one source or one institution, in any case, it would be a kind of a limited or restricted study because none of the institution or organization doesn't possess powerful resources for restoration of the chronology of the events or to restore the same event from point of view both sides involved in this conflict. This study was very interesting owing to the fact that at least 4 or 5 resources were united. We managed to restore the process of sharing. Our colleagues managed to interview the witnesses, and which resulted not in the, let's say, final indictment or charge in the international court. It's kind of good material for initiation of the investigation and the claims to the Russian Federation, which has to exercise control over its borders from point of view international law, etc., etc. Such kind of comprehensive approach, when we can unite different resources, involve different experts, this is instrumental to have good results. A bit later, we as the Ukrainian Helsinki Union, we present those reconstruction or the truth-telling. Maybe we are going to do that with the Truth Hungarian. That's why the Truth Hounds and negotiators will find themselves around the same round table, so to say. But in any way, restoration from kind of the circumstances of conflict using the resources and sources from both sides will allow the international courts to be involved in the investigation activities, which will entail kind of indictment and the punishment of those who are guilty. And we would like to offer to your attention this kind of study, and I'm going to place an emphasis not to the let's say not to the proof how much evidence-based those proofs, because it could be actually appealed against, and the Russian Federation will take pleasure to do that. But we are going to use a different approach, which makes this study really unique. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oleg. We have Mr. Simon on Skype. Mr. Simon, can you hear us? Yeah, I'm listening. You have the floor. Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to speak English. No problem, sure.
Хорошо. Честно говоря, я не все понял.
Honestly speaking, I did not understand everything because I did not have already command of the Ukrainian. I did not understand what Svitlana and Sasha were talking about, but more or less I can guess what they were going to say. The only thing I would like to add that indeed this report demonstrates that the Russian Federation, and I'm going to speak Russian actually, the Russian Federation in fact violates not only the international criminal law, but also a number of other standards and norms of international law, including the UN Charter, in accordance with which all the member countries of UN in their international relations refrain from the threat of violence or application of violence. We're talking about territorial inviolability or in any other way, which are incompatible with the goals of the United Nations. This principle which Articles 2, 4 in the United Nations Charter are based. This is one of the basic principles which underpins the world order. And though the Russian Federation does not recognize this, but this becomes a real fact. In our report, like Oleg mentioned before, this is not the only one which you can prove those happenings. In practice, practically, all of us, we demonstrated and we proved that the Russian Federation bluntly violates the basic rules and regulations of international law, including the basic norms of the UN Charter. Besides, of course, we have some amendment violations of international criminal law, according to which, as my colleague Svitlana mentioned, they violate a number of these norms of the Roman Charter, including among those Articles 7 and 8, which deal with the crimes against humanity and war crimes. Also, we are talking about the violation of a number of the international norms which regulate the issues pertaining to the human rights. For example, the European Human Rights Convention in both Ukraine and the Russian Federation are, let's say, parts of those conventions. The fact that not much is being done, both on the Ukraine part, on the part of the international community, in order to somehow to prevent this happening, save for the certain sanctions which the European Union introduced against the Russian Federation, which, of course, produce some effect, but otherwise, not much is being done. To us, or for us, it's very important that the Ukrainian government seriously entertains those issues, those steps which are associated with the investigation of the war crimes or the crime against humanity. So far, we do not have the traces of the efficient investigations, and while according to some subjective objective reasons this cannot be done on the territory of Ukraine, then we do hope that the International Criminal Court will do that, and we've been cooperating with that court for more than 1 year now regarding the Ukraine, and somehow we try to provide high quality information and evidence associated with such crimes. That's briefly what I meant to say. Thank you a lot. Thanks, dear colleagues. Maybe there are some questions or clarifications from the audience. If none, there may be some final words, or we can finish our briefing. Okay, in this case, thank you very much. I wish you all the success in your work and activities. Thank you. The next briefing will take at 11 sharp.